And if I'm a family member of someone who died, and someone's doing nonsense talk about dwarves and transgender people, instead of trying to figure out why my family member died and to make sure that we prevent that from happening again, I would be furious.
Cenk Uygur was a guest on Piers Morgan's show, Piers Morgan Uncensored, along with a panel made up of MAGA right-winger Natalie Winters and CNN anchor Richard Quest. It's an hour-and-a-half long episode, but in this section that I want to focus on, the panel talked about Donald Trump's disgusting comments after the recent plane crash. So we're going to take a look at clips of Piers Morgan's show. I'm going to share my thoughts on this as well. Let's check it out together.
I want to play a clip of President Trump talking about the appalling plane crash in Washington.
Point out that various articles that appeared prior to my entering office, and here's one. The FAA's diversity push includes focus on hiring people with severe intellectual and psychiatric disabilities. That is amazing. And then it says FAA says people with severe disabilities are most underrepresented segment of the workforce, and they want them in, and they can be air traffic controllers. I don't think so.
I've got to be honest, Cenk, before you respond to that, I did not like that. I didn't like that. I just felt like there's a time and a place to do that kind of stuff, and it's not in the immediate aftermath of a terrible crash with so many people killed, and before you really know anything about what's happened. Now, it may well turn out, as often with Trump, that a lot of the stuff he's talking about, in some way, that there will be merit to the argument. But I just felt the timing, to me, was wrong. That if you're president of the United States and 60-odd people plus the people on board the helicopter, if they've all died in a horrific crash, actually your job in that moment is to be comforter-in-chief, not blamer-in-chief.
Yeah. So I totally agree with you. First off, yes, I know the program that he's referring to, and it doesn't help our side to deny reality. So there was a terrible DEI or diversity program about a decade ago, and it did absurd things like give you extra points if science was your worst class, right? So it was absurd. But that's been gone for over a decade now. And coming right out of the crash, when you start blaming DEI, what you're saying to your base is, oh, I'm not going to look into what went wrong here. Was it the plane? Was it the helicopter? Why was it the miscommunication? Overstaffing, understaffing. Obviously, overstaffing is not an issue, but understaffing, etc. Right? You're coming out and going, minorities did it, and that's a terrible look. And you could say, hey, you know what, Cenk, you just told us that there were some DEI abuses. That's right, and that's part of why they won the election. But if you then swing the pendulum so far that you blame minorities after every single incident, which is basically what looks like it's happening right now, you're going to turn off the country. You certainly turned me off. So, and then they realize, oh wait, black voters are coming towards us, so that's a bad idea. So Jesse Waters goes on Fox News and goes, well, okay, it wasn't black people, it was dwarves, the deaf, and transgender people. You didn't even investigate anything yet, and you're blaming dwarves? It's absurd, and it's going to have the pendulum swing back against you, and the American people are going to go, I'm tired of you blaming minorities and women and dwarves for everything. This is absurd.
Okay, Natalie.
I'm going to stop here for just a second before we get to the spin from Natalie Winters. I agree with both Piers Morgan and Cenk Uygur here. We've never seen anything as disgusting as Donald Trump in politics, and since I've been alive. I wasn't around in the civil rights era and all that there would have been horrible things said then, but just Trump can't help himself. He cannot behave like a normal human being because he's not a normal human being. He has no empathy for others. So any other normal president or even politician would just come out and say, this is a tragedy. We're going to grieve for these people. We're going to let the experts do their job and try to figure out what went wrong here. But right now is not the time and the place to talk about that.
Well, look, I think that the American people have gotten tired of the inability to be able to just call a spade, which is that prioritizing the hiring of people. Sure, maybe it was 10 years ago, but the Obama administration directly changed in 2013 the FAA hiring procedures to shift away from actual merit-based standardized testing, accredited institutions, to favor more, cushy biodata metrics because people grew up in a difficult household or had a certain skin color. And you know what? There's lasting ramifications from that. And I think for so long, the American people have been called out as racist or sexist or homophobic or whatever for calling it out. But in reality, that's what the status quo is in terms of who people are hiring. And to say that people can't call it out for what it is, I think is just a continual version of that gaslight. There's serious issues going on. And I think that in industries like the FAA, things that have absolutely nothing to do with identity or anything related to ad hominem attacks on people, that the American people are tired. And that's why people elected President Trump, because he calls it out for what it is. I mean, this is...
Here's what's stupid about what this Natalie Winters is saying. No one was thinking anything about DEI hires with air traffic controllers. Nobody. Nobody in the general public was thinking anything about that until Donald Trump started saying this. There was no one saying, oh, I'm going to go vote for Donald Trump because he's going to get rid of transgender people or whatever working as air traffic controllers. That wasn't a thing. Trump just pulled this out of thin air.
This is not just run-of-the-mill DEI. This is hiring dwarves and transgender people to direct airplanes. That is nonsensical.
All right, Richard.
Whoa. Natalie, I have a question for you, right? I have a question for you. Do you, forgive me, Piers,
Sure.
but
No, please.
I know a thing or two about doing this. Do you believe that any of those people, the mentally challenged, the dwarfs, any of those people that were substandard, in his view, were being employed under that policy for the purpose of being an air traffic controller? Not an administrator, not an assistant.
The fact that you can even ask me a question if the United States is hiring dwarves and mentally challenged people to direct air traffic, I think sort of proves that we're in a bit of a sticky situation.
With respect,
obviously, they're still investigating it. But what I'm saying is that if the hiring process has been shifted not to be merit-based, then yeah, I think that's worth looking into, and I think we should investigate it. But I can still call it out for what it is. There's still systemic issues going on with FAI hiring policies and procedures. If the fact that you can actually ask me if a dwarf would have been in the control tower. I don't know. People who are mentally challenged, they're probably not capable of doing that job. So I would like to live in a country where you don't have to worry about those people being in a control tower and you can't even ask me a question like that.
Okay. Except when you are looking at a plane crash, the normal standard of doing this is you say, let us find the facts first. Now, with respect, I do have some more experience of this than most people. I've covered every major plane crash since Lockerbie. And Piers, you'll remember, of course, MH370.
My last 7 weeks on air at CNN, when I was your colleague, every night we did the missing plane, and you were my go-to expert.
You put in the domain those areas that maybe the public needed to think about, i.e., air traffic control, complexity, Reagan National, the flight paths. What you don't do is speculate. Rampant speculation. And that's what the president did. And to use his exact words, I have some thoughts and opinions on this. That, by any standard, is what you don't do. You let the NTSB, as indeed we heard from the NTSB, we heard from her, the chair, say, let us get on with this. But no, he put in the domain a load of stuff that may be relevant in the future, but it's not the position of the president to say, hey, let's have a speculation game.
I'm going to stop right there because you get the gist of everything that happened with this. But Richard Quest, what he said is exactly right. And this Natalie Winters, there's no evidence that mentally challenged people were being hired to be aircraft traffic controllers. I mean, do people actually honestly believe that when they were hiring air traffic controllers, somebody said, well, I have this perfectly qualified person over here who would be a great air traffic controller, but because of DEI, I'm going to hire this mentally challenged person that's not up to the task. That's absurd. Just because Donald Trump says these things it does not make them reality, but to a portion of the country it is. To these MAGA right-wingers like her, if Donald Trump says it, it's reality. So if Donald Trump goes on TV tonight and says that aliens just landed in Nebraska and they're all 10 feet tall and they have 3 heads, then the conversation is going to be, well, what are they doing about the 10-foot tall aliens with the 3 heads? As if it's reality. It's just insane. And one thing that I don't think has been really talked about with this is, I was thinking about this, how many professions has Donald Trump done terrible damage to? You look at air traffic controllers are under attack right now. Who would want to be an air traffic controller? Who right now would be like, hey, I'm thinking about being an air traffic controller. I'm going to go and apply for that. That was a job that was non-controversial. People didn't think anything about air traffic controllers. And in terms of this idea that all of these unqualified people had been hired and were being hired, prior to this plane crash, we went 16 years without a crash of a major airline. And planes during that 16-year time frame flew for not millions of hours, not billions of hours, but literally trillions of hours without an accident. So somebody must have been doing something right. Somebody must have been qualified. Now, we do have a problem, apparently, as Cenk Uygur brought up, that there aren't enough air traffic controllers. Well, with Donald Trump constantly running his mouth about them, do we think, would you think that would lead to more hiring of air traffic controllers? No, people aren't going to want to do that job. Federal workers under attack. I mean, they've been under attack by the right wing for a long time, but really under attack now under Donald Trump's 2.0 administration and Elon Musk, who should be in prison, but that's a separate issue. Who would want to be a federal employee right now? And the other one that I think about is people working in elections officials, and poll workers. Again, a job that was non-controversial. People respected poll workers and people that worked on elections. They were viewed as nonpartisan, bipartisan. What happens with Donald Trump comes along? Those people are getting death threats now. Who would want to be work on elections now at this point? So I don't know if anybody has single-handedly damaged more professions than Donald Trump. But again, just this idea that all of these people were being hired who were unqualified to work as air traffic controllers, it's just absurd to me. And it's great that, a lot of people are mad at Cenk Uygur because they don't think he's left-wing enough, but I always think that he does a great job on Piers Morgan's show. And even Piers Morgan here, as much of a propagandist as he is and a buddy and a suck-up to Trump, even he had to admit that this was the wrong place and wrong time for this. But let me know what you think about all this. Do you agree with this Natalie Winters, MAGA person? Do you agree with Cenk Uygur and Richard Quest? Let me know in the comments what you think. Make sure to give me a like and subscribe. This is Chris on Culture, and I will see you in the next video.